Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by us. Free trial, RotoWire.com/try. Today is Friday, March 1st, 2024. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard!
Happy to have these guys. Yeah, happy to have these guys back after we dropped them to streaming Kyrian Sprecher last week. You might see him later in March again.
He had a higher game count that week.
Higher PER.
Yeah.
Lots going on there. Let's jump into the news. Wembanyama destroyed Chet Holmgren in the Thunder versus Spurs matchup in San Antonio, despite the Thunder being, I think, 11-point favorites on the road. Spurs get the win 132-118. Wemby continues to be insane. 28, 13, and 7 with 5 blocks and 2 steals. It is the third time this month that Wembanyama has had 25, 10, and 5 with 5 blocks in a game. Only Kareem and Hakeem have done that. Shannon, would you take Victor Wembanyama number 1 overall next season?
He's in the conversation. He's been the number 1 ranked player over the past week. Over the past month, he's been the number 3 ranked player in fantasy basketball. That's number 3 in 29 minutes per game. The only other player in the top 10 averaging less than 34 minutes per game is Chet Holmgren over that past month. So I think Wemby is in the conversation already. You have to assume as he matures and he's going to be afforded more minutes. And so if you've got just the same production we're seeing this year in his rookie season over the past 4 weeks, you apply 32, 33, 34 minutes to that, and he's easily in that conversation for the number 1 overall pick.
Well, and the injuries that we expected, I certainly expected, and I thought he'd be sitting a lot with the Spurs being awful, but he's at 54 games. Mm-hmm. So what does he miss, like 5 or 6 total? We'll see what happens down the stretch, but he keeps playing too. It's awesome.
Yeah, he had that like ankle injury, and then his minutes were limited. This is interesting. I was talking about this on the XM show with Joe Bartle, who's filling in for Nick last night. First of all, Wembanyama is actually very quietly number 2 in Defensive Player of the Year race on the odds behind Rudy Gobert. Wembanyama before last night's game was minus 700 to win Rookie of the Year. That is down to minus 2,000 after last night's game, with Chet Holmgren plus 1,000 to win Rookie of the Year. So,
6 games, by the way. Wemby's missed 6 games this year.
I checked. But I'll tell you this too: over the past month, he's played more games than anyone else ranked in the top 10. He's played 13 games. Anthony Davis, Luka, they're 1 and 2 over the past month on per game value, 11 games each. So, I mean, Wemby has been just a consistent stud, always out there.
He moves like he's like 7'6", but he moves like he's 6'6". I feel like Holmgren, to me, moves more awkwardly than Wembanyama in terms of, like, if you're talking injury risk. I actually feel like more worried about Holmgren, but I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this.
Spurs, nice of the Spurs to snap their 5-game skid. They've been on the road for 26 days. Was that the rodeo? Did they have the rodeo again? Isn't that always that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, well, enough of the sunshine and positivity. Let's talk about some god-awful basketball in Washington. The Wizards have now lost 13 straight after losing in L.A. to the Lakers in overtime last night. They lost 134-131. Jordan Poole, 34 points off the bench. He's no Bernard King, though, I'll tell you that much. He has not started the last 5 games, but is averaging over 23 points in 31 minutes while shooting a unsavory 40% from the field over that stretch. Lakers, they had to play AD 41 minutes and LeBron 39 minutes to beat the Wizards. That is just bad. Guys, is last night evidence that we don't need to take the Lakers seriously?
Well, here's what the media will tell you, Ken. The Lakers wrong a back-to-back. It's that simple. I think that you have to take them seriously in the sense that, if you like, they are, what are they, 9th right now in the standings. They're going to be in the play-in, and they could rise up past the play-in, right? Could happen.
They're 2.5 games from avoiding the play-in.
Yeah. I think I would take them over anybody right now that's in the play-in zone, like if they ended up in a play-in situation. And I still think it would make OKC, like if it was OKC LA first round, I would not feel like immense confidence that OKC would win that series. They should win it based on their record and everything else, but you still have to be worried about the experience and playoff, especially playoff experience of LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Fair enough. And good news for Shannon. Pistons no longer the worst record in the NBA. It is the Washington Wizards who've lost 13 in a row. Pistons moving on up their half game with 9 W's and only 49 losses over the Wizards, who have 50 losses.
Anything specific you can attribute this to, Shannon? Just
it's definitely not due to Monty Williams.
Okay.
Let's blame Jordan Poole. It's due to Jordan Poole.
Yes.
Shannon, take us to some interesting news down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, earth-shaking news coming out of Atlanta.
Big for
the Hawks have waived 35-year-old Aussie veteran Patty Mills. Patty Cakes, 2014 NBA champ with San Antonio. He's played in 879 career games with the Trailblazers, Spurs, Nets, and Hawks. He was a vocal leader for Australia's national team, the Boomers. Scored 42 points in the 2020 bronze medal game versus Luka's Slovenian team to earn Australia their first Olympic basketball medal.
Bravo, Patty.
We're going to miss Patty.
Bravo, Patty Cakes. No, he's a bit of an iron horse at one point. From 4 seasons, 2015 to 2019, he only missed 3 games, and he had a back-to-back 82-game seasons.
I was trying to look up some.
I
real minutes.
This time of the season when these veterans get waived and there'll be the news is like, this veteran agrees to a buyout on this date, so he's still eligible to join a playoff team, which happened with Mike Muscala, Pistons legend. The report from Woj was Muscala will be eligible to join a playoff contender.
All those contenders racing.
Yes. You know, they're racing to get Mike Muscala, who is 32, could not carve out a role with the Washington Wizards or the Detroit Pistons this year. I'm sure he's going to fit right in with a playoff contender.
Correct.
I could see Patty, you know, just quietly signing with like Phoenix or something. You know, they don't really have a point guard. But yes, your point is very. It's for players who are not like Patty Mills, and Patty Mills might not even play a single playoff minute if he gets signed by one of these teams. So, yeah.
All right, folks. It's time for fan feedback. Alex, did you have a point you wanted to bring up? I'm sorry.
I did not.
All right, fan feedback. Let's go. Question from Free Key. Which Mavs big has the most value rest of season? PJ Washington, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, or Maximilian Kleber?
Yeah, we should note about Lively. I wrote about him in my rookie update article the other day. You know, he managed to play 20 minutes in back-to-back games, which is nice, but still has not seen more than 23 minutes since returning from his injury, basically since Gafford got there. And look, he's still producing blocks numbers, averaging 2.6 blocks over his past 5 games. In terms of Gafford, I mean, they're essentially splitting minutes, right? And then PJ Washington sees some at center, and Kleber sees some at center. Gafford not playing that well.
It's a bad fantasy situation.
It's a bad fantasy situation. So, like Shannon, if you have one or both of these guys on your roster, Gafford or especially Lively, are you trying to find ways to drop these guys? Would you prefer to hang on to them?
Yeah, I mean, of those 4 players, Lively and Washington are basically neck and neck over the past week in value. Lively on a per game basis has been the 84th ranked player, and Washington's 89th. Washington is my pick of those 4 players. He's the one I believe will have the most fantasy value down the stretch. You know, we kind of saw this with his most recent game. He came out, played 31 minutes, 23 points, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 5 3-pointers. He has not been shy about chucking up 3-pointers since joining Dallas. Since joining the starting lineup with Dallas, which has been 6 games now, he's averaging 5 3-point attempts per game, only hitting 30%. Once that creeps up and he's shooting 35, 36% from downtown, which we saw so far this season, past couple of years, he was in that range. His averages are only going to improve. And it's encouraging to me that he's been, of those 4 players also, he's the only one who's been playing over 30 minutes on a regular basis. All 4 games over the past 8 days, he has played over 30 minutes. So it's PJ Washington for me. I've always loved his versatility. And I'm pretty sure we called it out on the show that we believed he was going to have more value with Dallas than he did with Charlotte. And I think that holds. I do think he's a lock to be a top 100 player for the rest of the season.
Specific question probably for Alex. Does being out for personal reasons, Alan Wiggins, Golden State Warriors, apply for IL eligibility on Yahoo?
I'm pretty sure it does not. I don't believe it does.
I think it will on ESPN because we run that outfit, right? But
I know. So I know for sure suspensions do not. If a player is suspended, they're not IR eligible. Double checking right now. I don't think it is for personal absences, but
while Alex looks that up, here's a basketball question for Shannon. Besides Schroeder and Bridges, who on the Nets will have the most value down the stretch? It is a train wreck there. I should add, we'll discuss this in Waiver Wire. Nets are also the only team with 5 games next week. So who do we like? Is Cam Johnson had a good night last night, but a terrible season? Is there anyone else we like? Claxton number's been going down. Who do we like, Shannon, on the Nets after Bridges and maybe Schroeder?
It is tough. I am going to default to Claxton. He's starting every game for them. He's topping 20 minutes, well over 20 minutes most nights. It does vary. 30 minutes, 21, 27, 28 over the past 4. The production has been up and down over those 4 games as well. But he still has enough upside with rebounds and blocks. His field goal percentage is always going to be solid, that he is the default number 2 option on that team. I am not necessarily confident that Schroeder is going to hold value for the remainder of the season. Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons both sat out last night. So don't jump to conclusions about Schroeder. He's had plenty of duds since joining the Nets too. And once Cam Thomas or on games when Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons are available, Schroeder's not going to have he's not going to go off for 23, 8 and 7 like he did last night. So I'm not as confident in Schroeder having long-term value. Yes, while Cam Thomas and Simmons are out, but when one of those 2 is healthy, Schroeder gets knocked down a couple levels.
I'm like 95% sure Wiggins does qualify for IL on Yahoo.
Will indeed qualify for. Okay.
Yes, but RotoWire does not control that. We control ESPN's. So
gotcha. All right, Sherman's very happy. All right, gentlemen, we now move on to the meaty money segment of the pod.
The Waiver Wire. This is how this works. If you've been here before and if you haven't, we each have 2 regular Waiver Wire pickups, players who are rostered in 50% or fewer of Yahoo leagues, and then 1 long shot each, 25% or fewer of Yahoo leagues. In terms of game count this week, you just heard Shannon talking about it. Brooklyn has 5 games next week. The rest of the league is pretty normal with 4 or 3 games. I'm going to kick things off with Jalen Suggs, who I was surprised to see is only 49% rostered. His minutes are fluctuating more compared to the start of the season. His stats have cooled down a bit, right? But over the past 14 games, still averaging 1.8 steals and half a block. Averaging 11.5 points a game with 2.3 threes, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds during the stretch as well. And the Magic have 4 games next week. So even if, Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony and Gary Harris and all these other guards they have kind of get mixed in and Suggs is only seeing 25 minutes a game, you get 4 games out of him. You might be able to get 8-9 steals from Suggs, which is very rare to find off the waiver wire.
Yeah, stocks are always underrated. Steals are always underrated. And Suggs provides those.
Ken, where are you going?
Well, first I'll say, fans, if you like our video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. I'm bringing back a free agent name we talk about over and over again for the woeful Chicago Bulls, Andre Drummond. He is a boomer bust, but they've been starting him against big lineups, and they're having success with him. Drummond's ranked 65th over the last 7 days, 26 rebounds the other night. Chicago has 4 games next week. One of those 4s will be a dud for Drummond, but I bet 2 of them are another crazy sick rebounding night. If you need a center, if you're worried about Nick Claxton play as of late, for instance, Andre Drummond is a very viable option. They're starting Drummond and Vooch against big teams like Minnesota. And look, why Drummond isn't in a Sixer uniform, why they didn't move him at the trade line's beyond me, but clearly they're going to play him, and that's why they didn't deal him. So old man Drummond, 47% rostered on Yahoo right now.
And not only getting starts against big teams, but also just in general. I mean, if Caruso sits, I believe they'll probably start Drummond in those scenarios as well and just go with the bigger lineup. It kind of matched up. Caruso sat the most recent game against Cleveland, who has Twin Towers of their own. My first free agent suggestion of the week is Rui Hachimura. Rui has been crushing it for the Lakers. He's made 11 straight starts. He's averaging 16.9 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.9 3-pointers in 32 minutes per game over the past 8 starts. He's only 28% rostered on Yahoo right now. I'm actually very surprised that it's that low, given it's been a few weeks now where he's been locked in the starting lineup. Seems like the Lakers are going to stick with that, or I don't know, maybe after last night's game against Washington, they'll switch things up. But as long as Rui is in the starting lineup, he gives you solid production, especially with points and some 3-pointers.
Angering all those people who burned fab budget on Rui, on Torian Prince.
Absolutely. I am going to go to another name that's frequently on the waiver wire being picked up and dropped. Caris LeVert, 41% rostered. Again, another guy whose stats, they're all up and down. Like, just, roll a dice on his points and assists every night. But he is still Cleveland's 6th man, and his passing has actually been great. It's got to be close to a career high, actually, in terms of the assist rate lately. In February, so the whole month of February, 6.2 assists per game. He's also giving you 10 points, 5 rebounds, and about 1 stock in 26 minutes. The efficiency, pretty bad. So if you are really efficiency sensitive in like an 8-cat or something, maybe there are other options. But the Cavs have 4 games next week. So again, someone who might be able to get you 24, 25 assists in a given week in an 8-cat league, that's pretty hard to turn down.
I never thought he would evolve to a viable backup point guard, but that's kind of what's happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, his game, he continues to improve. I mean, he's a better passer than ever and a better defender than ever. At some point, I think they went to him and they're like, if you are not going to defend, we don't really need you out there. We got other guys. We got Okoro, we got Strus. Like, we don't have to play you. And I think he took that to heart. So he's been pretty good.
All right, well, my second pickup is stealing a name from Alex over the last few weeks. But Corey Kispert is lighting it up for those terrible Wizards. He's only rostered in 29% of leagues. Look, hey, this Wizards team is awful. They have lost 13 straight and now have the worst record in the NBA. But Kispert is one of the few Wizards who shoots and actually shoots well, efficiently. Last 5 games, he's averaged over 18 points, 4 dimes, 1.6 stocks, and 3.4 triples while shooting 48.5% from the field. That's a lot of threes with a positive field goal percentage. Washington has 4 games next week. That's probably 4 losses for the Wizards, but Kispert's going to keep shooting because really who else should shoot on this team?
And that production's coming, whether he's coming off the bench. He's made 1 spot start when Advia was out. The thing that's impressed me most about Kispert is he's dishing out assists. He's averaging 5.5 assists over the past 2 games. So he's doing more than just shooting.
fundamentally sound. Came off the bench last night. It was an overtime game, but still got 27 minutes off the bench.
Absolutely. My second waiver wire suggestion of the week is Tre Mann, guard, Charlotte Hornets. 41% rostered. That seems low. Again, this is a guy who's made tons of starts. He started 8 games in a row for the former Bobcats, averaging 11.9 points, 5.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.8 steals, 1.8 threes in those 8 starts. The efficiency is low, which is kind of held down his overall value. Not just since joining Charlotte, but his efficiency has always been a problem. Low to mid, 70% free throw shooter. But he's great for points leagues. I mean, 5.5 rebounds from a point guard eligible player is very solid. And the big question here is, when will LaMelo Ball return?
He ain't coming back. They're 11 games out of the play-in. They're not going to risk.
I do wonder that. And there's some recent quotes from the Hornets coach that kind of alluded to the fact that LaMelo, even though other reports have said that LaMelo has, restarted basketball activities, everything else, the coach doesn't seem to think that LaMelo is coming back anytime soon, or he's alluding to that fact. So for me, as long as LaMelo is out, Tre Mann needs to be rostered quite a bit more heavily than he is right now.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was gonna say I have that quote, by the way. I can read this off. It's not that long. It's from Steve Clifford, asked where LaMelo is health-wise compared to a couple weeks ago. Quote, "It's hard to tell. Look, he's doing the same stuff now that he was doing 2 weeks ago. I don't know that stuff. He does what they allow him to do. There's a lot of factors in that, obviously. Like today, he did a lot of shoot around. He's been doing that for a while. He wants to be back. Again, he doesn't feel healthy enough and people aren't comfortable enough that he should play. I don't really know how to answer that. He does shoot around and things like that. He does his work. I know he wants to get back. There's just a lot of factors on that one."
The Hornets are like turning into the G League affiliate for OKC. Didn't they just pick up Pokashevsky in addition to Tre Mann?
They did
for them now. Yeah.
I can't wait until we get to talk about Poku again.
God.
But LaMelo, it's a big concern for LaMelo. I mean, I worry, after everything that happened with his brother Lonzo as well.
Yeah.
It's troubling. I wish him health. He's a fantastic player and super fun to watch. But Tre Mann, I was very surprised. He was available in multiple leagues of mine. Most of my leagues are deeper. I believe he should be rostered until LaMelo is actually back on the floor.
I'm glad with Tre Mann you made that efficiency comment. In the notes you just wrote F is low, and I was like, is Tre Mann having trouble getting laid?
We're gonna move off of that one, but we will stay in Charlotte. I am suggesting 11% rostered Cody Martin, who has seen at least 28 minutes in 8 of the past 10 games, which is great. I mean, part of the reason he's fallen off the radar to an extent, especially compared to his brother Caleb, who's in Miami, is that Cody's been hurt for a long time, and the fact that he's able to play this many minutes in a row is fantastic. But during this stretch, he's actually putting up good numbers: 7.6 points, 5.1 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and 1.8 stocks. He actually had a 10 assist game the other night. He is only shooting 39% from the field, and Charlotte has 3 games next week. So if you're not just streaming, or if you want someone to stream and you can't take a field goal percentage hit, he's just not your guy. But if you're in a deeper league and it's a long-term thing, whatever, just keep those things in mind. He's putting up good numbers. Ken, who do you have from Phoenix?
I don't know if this is my long shot or my boring pick of the week, but Royce O'Neale, 30-year-old, seems like he's 45. Royce O'Neale, forward for the Phoenix Suns. Look, the Suns have no depth. Beal's hurt yet again. He started the last 2 games. And last 5 games, though, he's averaging 10 points, 6.5 boards, almost 4 assists, 2.7 stocks, gets a lot of steals, and 2.7 threes. Not particularly efficient. I will warn you, though, Suns only have 3 games next week. But O'Neale could be seeing some monster minutes down the stretch for these Suns, who probably don't want to play their stars at the end of the season either.
O'Neale, what do you think O'Neale's career high in points is?
career high. I bet he's had hot from 3 and had like a 27-point game.
20 points.
27 was my guess. That was what popped in my head initially too.
It is 20 points.
20.
Yeah,
but he had
that. He had that once in 2020, 21. But no, I mean, good point. Good points all around. Ken, this is the perfect spot for him, right? Where he can fill in, do some stuff defensively. Good pickup for Royce O'Neale in deep leagues. Shannon, who is your final waiver wire suggestion?
Yeah, my long shot of the week is Taylor Hendricks, forward for the Utah Jazz, 8% rostered on Yahoo. The rookie forward has made 4 straight starts for Utah. You have to assume he's going to be locked into that role rest of season. Over the past week, he's been a top 120 player. He's averaging 9.8 points, 6.8 rebounds in those 4 starts that he's made, and 2.4 blocks plus steals, and 2.1 threes per 36 on the season. I know steals and blocks have been kind of where I thought he would make his due as a potential fantasy impact player this year. In college last year, he averaged 1.7 blocks and 0.9 steals. He's got that extra length, athleticism. I think he can make an impact on the defensive end. Hasn't really done it since joining the starting lineup, but I expect that'll start to show up in the box score soon.
Yeah, he's been shooting a lot. He's been shooting a lot from the corners. So he should. I mean, it should bode well for his 3-point percentage. But he's kind of one of those bizarre players who it's like, yes, he's taking corner threes, but one of his best skill sets is his offensive rebounding. So there's kind of a weird balance to strike there. But he's been really good. He's been like, relatively speaking, I think he is a great fantasy profile. Let's put it that way. Yes. The numbers that he can put up will translate really well to fantasy.
They essentially gave Kelly Olynyk away to clear up minutes for Hendricks. Like, they want him to play the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it's telling that they went with Hendricks in the starting lineup over Kessler as well, because they easily could have slid Collins down to the 4, Markin into the 3. Markin played a lot of minutes at 3 last season, but they went with Hendricks, so they obviously believe.
Okay, I believe it is time for our Friday daily fantasy picks. We will be referencing DraftKings salary for the most part in this segment. We have 9 games today. Highest over-under, Wizards at Clippers is at 239 at BetRivers when I checked. But there's a couple other high over-unders as well. It's just the nature of the NBA these days. Let's see. In terms of actually, you know what, Ken, I want to rope you into the segment very quickly before you get too deep into the comments, because we have Dallas at Boston.
Yes.
You went to a Boston game the other night. Tuesday, actually, in person.
Game. Sixers win. Fantastic. Yes. Bought a really ugly Porzingis t-shirt.
What did you see in person, and what have you seen from the Celtics lately?
Man, the C's just toyed with Philadelphia all game. They never really broke away. They were up like between 11 and 8 for most of it. Sixers got within 2 or 4 within like when it was like 9.5 minutes left, and then the Celtics scored 17 straight. They're really on cruise control. But from a DFS standpoint, you know, they don't need every star to contribute to do well. So it's kind of a crapshoot whether Porzingis or White or, of course, Brown or Tatum are going to go off. They have been feeding Porzingis like that Philly game when they're facing a donut team, meaning a team that's got nothing in the middle. But that is not the case tonight against the Mavs because I think Lively is playing. And they've got Gafford off the bench now. So I don't see this, even though it's a revenge game for Porzingis, I don't see this as a good night for Porzingis. I think it's going to be a more classic Tatum Brown night. And, Holiday and White, it's just a crapshoot when those guys have numbers off the crumbs from Brown and Tatum.
Yeah, I can see this as maybe like a 3-pointer night for Porzingis. Maybe take the over on 3-pointers in a player prop situation. But yeah, it's good. Yeah. That's very good insight.
Draw Lively out of the key. I like that on offense, right? Porzingis threes make sense.
Shannon, what do you like on this slate? What's the first place you're going?
Yeah, I think the first game that you have to look at on this slate is Portland Memphis. It has a very low. Very
do
low
we have to?
We
Do
have
we
to.
have to look at it?
We have to.
Are they our new sponsor, the Memphis Grizzlies?
I'm not suggesting you watch the game.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
We're not going that far. But, and the 208.5 over under is absolutely pathetic in the year 2024 for an NBA game. But there's just too much value to be had. We already have Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. has been ruled out. Obviously, Bane's out still. Pippen's out. Rose, Marcus Smart.
Williams night, baby.
Kennard, Conchar, both are looking doubtful. GG Jackson is questionable. So you have Lamar Stevens. You have Trey Jameson.
You don't just have Lamar Stevens. You have Lamar Stevens at center. What the?
Yes. And he's actually been
I think
solid.
Santi will probably pay a little.
Santi Aldama at power forward. Our boy Vince Williams, Zaire Williams.
Zaire's been playing well.
Been
playing well lately for them. Yeah.
I mean, he right now in our optimizer, he's the top value play for tonight's slate.
I love Zaire.
That's just the Memphis side. There's like 4 or 5 guys that I think are strong considerations at discounted prices to plug in your lineups just from the Memphis side. And then there's more of that when you look at Portland. Brogdon, Henderson, Sharp, all out. DeAndre Ayton's doubtful with a hand injury. So Jeremy Grant and Simons, the 2 obvious plays, but Chris Murray, who has been receiving spot starts lately, he'll probably get another start at the shooting guard spot. Duop Reith, old favorite of the show, or a new favorite from this season at least. He's been playing about 15 minutes off the bench regularly. He could see twice as many minutes with Ayton out tonight. So there's just tons and tons of value options, and you can take 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 from each side of that matchup and be able to plug in a lot of studs around them.
We've been.
Side note, my barber, a lifelong Vermonter, huge Memphis Grizzlies fan, got my hair cut 2 days ago. We spent 15 minutes on Vince Williams. I'm sure the rest of the Vermont shop had absolutely no idea what we were talking about.
Oh man. You've been doing the show for too long. I'm like, I'm not really a Duop Reith guy. I'm actually more of a Moses Brown guy. Maybe come off the bench. He's questionable though, so you never know.
That's true.
Shannon, we also have the Pistons going up. They're at home, going up against Cleveland. Cleveland's 9-point favorites, but Donovan Mitchell is questionable, so that could open up some stuff. Zia Stewart's been back for Detroit. Talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. Is there anything you like from this game?
Now, Asar Thompson is a little bit interesting. In truth, I don't like the matchup for the Pistons, so I'm probably going to stay away from it. Asar's at 5,500 on DraftKings. He's played 36 and 35 minutes in back-to-back games, which is certainly intriguing. He's played 3 games against Cleveland this year, averaging only 17 minutes per, but also 17.5 fantasy points. So he's been a point per minute in those Cleveland games. Given his role now, his newly expanded role since the trade deadline, you'd have to expect that he sees more minutes tonight. So he's pretty solid there. Cade, my boy Cade, has been tearing it up, averaging close to 50 fantasy points over the past 4. He does average in 3 contests against Cleveland this year, 44.1 fantasy points. And oddly, he's only 7,900 on DraftKings. I do feel like that's pretty low for him, especially he had a rough stretch right around the All-Star break, just before and just after, where he had quite a few 30-point fantasy games, but he's topped 50 in 2 of the past 4, topped 40 in all 4 of those. So I feel like you're getting at least a few $100 discount with Cade. So 7,900, he is an option for tonight.
Gentlemen, we're not getting questions, so I'm going to throw out a suggestion for you to think about. Wizards Clippers is at 239 over under. Wizards coming off, played last night and went overtime. Also just absolutely terrible. Also, you got Paul George probably not playing for the Clippers. Is this the night to pay for Harden or Kawhi?
I mean, I just think you worry about the game getting out of hand and then Kawhi or Harden playing like 29 minutes. I think that's always the worry with these games that are like
blowout fear. Yeah.
I mean, I say this for games that are 10-point spreads. This is a 16-point spread. So yeah, I mean, I think look, I mean, I'd be surprised if Paul George and Zubac played in this game. They're both questionable. What's the point?
Right.
So you may actually be able to find value in this game. With some guys off the bench potentially, like maybe this is, I wouldn't go as far as to say like you should play Amir Coffey necessarily, but like,
is this the Daniel Tice breakout we've been waiting for?
You just keep an eye on that game, But no, I mean, I could see people avoiding that game for that reason. So there's, I think, there's GPP stuff, to talk about there, but
it's also, it is the latest game of the night. It is not part of DraftKings main slate for tonight. The latest game for the main slate is the Sacramento, Minnesota game. Also, it is worth noting, DraftKings NBA tonight is a non-late swap night. So they're trying this. They're trying new non-late swap contests. So their primary slate tonight is non-late swap. In that scenario, let's say that the Clippers game was part of it, because of the blowout potential, I would probably avoid both sides of it without late swap being available. Because I would be surprised if Zubac or Paul George play. But it's a good question. I mean, I feel very similar about Clippers Washington as I do about some of these other lopsided games that we have on the slate. How close is the Milwaukee-Chicago game going to be? Where the heck are they playing? Why is that a 10 p.m. Eastern game, Alex?
I actually don't know. It's possible it's national TV. It is on ESPN. Yeah.
Okay.
So
weird.
Very
10
weird.
p.m. Eastern out of Chicago is a weird thing that you see very rarely. But there, the Philly-Charlotte game, for instance, another one that could be very lopsided. If that is the early game, so it doesn't apply, but it's just something to keep in mind with non-late swap. Some of your decisions are going to have to be different.
I will say, you mentioned Charlotte, Philly could be lopsided. It could also not be lopsided because the 76ers have been terrible lately, like really bad.
It's almost like they're missing their best player.
It is almost like they're missing their best player. But since January 25th, they have 4 wins. 4 wins since January 25th. So yes, they are a 11.5 point favorite over the Hornets, who played last night and lost to Milwaukee. But it could be a little closer, I think, than people expect. Let's see. At this point we only have 2 games we didn't talk about, so let's just quickly hit those and then get out of here. Golden State at Toronto. This is a 237.5 over under. My goodness. Golden State's been cooking on offense. They just played last night in MSG. Now going to Toronto. We have Andrew Wiggins, who's technically questionable for tonight's game, but seems more than likely that he will not play. Anything from this game or the Indy game, which shockingly, I will say, nobody had the injury report for the Pelicans. Like, am I going crazy? We also have Neesmith questionable for this game. So from these 2 games, anything that you see.
Hey, doesn't Dyson Daniels count as injury for Pelicans?
He does, but McCollum, Ingram, and Zion have been questionable for like 2 weeks.
I'll do the Golden State game first. Golden State at Toronto. You've got a couple of interesting values. The AirPods is still starting. Podziemski is still starting at the shooting guard spot for Golden State. With Wiggins out, Moses Moody has made back-to-back spot starts. He's played 23 and 26 minutes in those 2 games. Chris Paul also rejoined the rotation around the same time. So Moody's not getting a full complement of around 30 minutes, but he's good for about 25 minutes and maybe 20 fantasy points, he's $4,000 on DraftKings for tonight. Kuminga he's picked up a little bit. He's picked up his production a little bit with Wiggins out. He's coming off a nice 25-8, 2-2-2 game. So he's an interesting option as well. For Toronto, I'm going to go off the board. We're not going to highlight someone in their starting lineup. You guys know those names. But what about Grady Dick? Almost my long shot suggestion of the week. Grady Dick, since the All-Star break, or since the trade deadline, actually, has been a regular in Toronto's rotation, routinely playing around 20 minutes, chucking up a bunch of threes. He had a 31-point fantasy outing, 31 fantasy points against Indiana on the 26th of February in 23 minutes. He's routinely reaching double figures and has a couple 30-point fantasy outings, actually. Grady Dick, 3,700, could be a sneaky low ownership option from the Toronto side.
Yes, he could be. Let's see. Oh, it's been a while. Ken. You've had a couple weeks to really fire up. What's the old man rant today?
Do we really need 3 tribute statues for Kobe Bryant? 3? Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time and owner of 6 championships, has 1 statue. Bill Russell, owner of 13 championships and the first black coach in NBA history, has 1 statue. But Kobe needs 3? This is classic, overly dramatic Los Angeles. What's next? A Nick Van Exel blimp? Maybe a giant Pau Gasol transformer robot? That said, I did enjoy this quote from his wife, Vanessa Bryant, at the unveiling of the first statue. Vanessa said, quote, "Kobe picked the pose you're about to see, so if anyone has issues with it, tough shit." 3 statues, though? Arg!
I support Nick the Quick statues everywhere and anywhere in America.
Man, Exel blimp. You're not really set. You're kind of doing the opposite of like making your point there. You're like, what? We need a Nick Van Exel blimp? Like, yeah, probably. We actually should. More of that. Okay, mispronounced names. I think we avoided it. I think you may have slipped and called it Andrew Wiggins, Alan Wiggins.
Alan Wiggins. That's a good one.
Beginning, but that's bound to happen. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us in the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by us. Free trial, rotowire.com/try. Also, we would appreciate a like on the video, a subscription to the RotoWire NBA YouTube page, and just in general for you to pledge your allegiance to RotoWire. What's the end quote here, Ken?
Let's go to San Antonio, where recently released veteran Patty Mills said, quote, "Learn that you can stand up for who you are, stand up for your heritage, and be proud," end quote. Attention passengers, this 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.